there, quilting friends. It's Carolina Moore, your favorite sewing and quilting YouTuber, and today I'm doing a video that y'all haven't really been asking for. Really, you have been demanding this video in terms of boxed corners. When should you cut them and when should you sew them? And some of y'all have really big opinions on this, so I have 5 zippered pouches. That's right, we're gonna go through 5 different ways times whatnots that you can box your corners to make zippered pouches, and you can decide what works best for you because I'm gonna show them all. Ready? Let's get started. So I have my 5 zippered pouches ready to go. I have lining fabrics for all of them. These are all 8x10. So I have 2 8x10 lining fabrics for each one of these zipper pouches. I have a zipper. I like using at least a 12-inch zipper for an 8x10 pouch because longer zippers are just easier to manage. And then I have 2 8x10 pieces for the outside, and these already have fusible fleece to the back. So I have everything prepped. So we will be doing as little of the extra nonsense as possible. Okay, so for 3 of these bags, I'm going to cut the box corners now. I'm going to cut them before doing any sewing. This is my preferred method, although there are other ways to do this, and I will show you on 2 of the pouches ways to cut these after the fact, and that'll be up to you. On all of these pouches, I'm going to do a 2-inch box corner. And on this first one, I'm actually going to show you not using the box bag template. I'm going to be showing you using just a regular Creative Grids ruler. And I am still going to cut a 2-inch box corner. So I have my 2 lining pieces just stacked up, and I'm going to cut a 2-inch box corner. I'm lining this up with a 2-inch right here, and I'm going to cut in. And this is exactly why I invented the box bag template, because when you cut in here, if you cut too far, you've ruined your fabric, so we don't want to do that. You just want to be as careful as possible cutting in, and you end up with a loose tooth situation that you can just try to hack out with your rotary cutter, which was always my solution before I made the box bag template. There we go. We'll do that again with the other side. I'm going to cut a 2-inch box corner. Here we go. Yeah, this is not my favorite way to cut them because of the potential damage you can do by cutting too far. Because if you cut too far, you've cut into your seam allowance, you've cut a hole in your bag before you've even started. All right, I'll go ahead and cut my 2-inch box corner out of the lining fabric. This is the outer fabric, excuse me. It's not directional, so I don't have to worry about which one's the top and which one's the bottom. And do the same thing again. Hopefully not cut too far. I've made a lot of bags. And for stuff like this, I definitely want to come in with scissors because it's just scary. All right, so that's how you can cut box corners using a regular ruler. Any old ruler that you have that'll measure the size that you need, you can cut a box corner with that. Okay, so now I'm going to cut with the box bag template. Again, I'm going to start with my lining fabrics. These ones look like they're directional. Yep, they're directional, so I want to cut the bottom corners, which is going to be these 2. In here with the box bag template, again, I'm lining up with the 2 and the 2 to cut a 2-inch box corner. Cut in, cut in. Other side, 2-inch box corner. Cut in, cut in. And this cuts those perfect every time without having to worry about overcutting your fabrics. So it's super simple. When I have my fusible fleece already on the back, I just cut through 1 layer. These are directional because they're my flamingos. I want to make sure that I'm cutting the bottom and not having my mingos be upside down. So same thing, cut in, cuts that beautifully. Now, as long as I'm showing you truly every way ever to box your corners to make box bag cornered bags, box corner bag. Anyway, I'm going to use my AccuQuilt because there's also the AccuQuilt box bag die, which I designed for AccuQuilt, and it's yet another way to box your corners. So we should definitely include that in this video as well, right? Okay, so I have my box bag die. Okay, so here is the boxed corner side. And the cool thing about the box bag die is that I can do 4 layers at once. Line those up. I'm doing a 2-inch box corner. I only need a mat to cover the blade part that I'm using. I can take the entire thing and push it towards me, so I have extra space over here for this fabric. And start running it through. As it catches, I tuck this extra fabric over on the side. And then once it's through, you can pull it either way. And now I've cut 2 layers of fabric, box corners. For the outer fabric, which has a fusible fleece, I only really want to do 2 at a time because that fusible fleece is pretty thick, but I'll do the same thing. Let's see. That's the top. Fold it in half. 2-inch. Put my mat on top. Bring it towards me so I have that extra space next to the die for the extra fabric. Tuck this through. Super fast. Box corners. Last one. Make sure I've got my directional fabric. Directional. This might be the fastest way. I think the AccuQuilt is the fastest for cutting the box corners. Just making sure to bring it towards me so I have that extra room on the front for the little bit of extra fabric to tuck in. Boom. Done. Box corners. Okay, so there are 3 different ways right there to box your corners. We did it with a regular ruler, we did a box bag template, and we did it with the box bag die from AccuQuilt. The other 2 ways to box your corners are going to be after portions are sewn, so I'm not going to do that now. Now we are going to start sewing these bags together. So we talked about when to sew the box corners. You can, right now at this point, already sew your box corners. It's not usually the way that I do, but you absolutely can, and I'm going to show you why that makes a difference. So let's go ahead and sew. We'll do this on the cake one, which happened to be the one that was cut with the AccuQuilt. But all of these box corners, though they were cut using different methods, they're all 2-inch box corners. So this isn't going to matter. And we're just going to sew this using our 1/4-inch foot with a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Go back and forth. And that stitches a box corner close. Now I like to chain piece these because there's a lot of them to sew. There's 2 on each side. There are 2 sides, and then there's a lining and an outer. So that's 2 times 2 times 2. So 2 times 2 is 4. Times 2 is 8. That adds up for box corners. Once I have them all sewn, I can start cutting them off the back because I need to do the box corner on the other side of each of these. So I just cut my 2 outsides off. I left my 2 linings on there. Fold my box corner in half. And sew. There we go. So these are already sewn as box corners. The next step for this bag would be to attach it to the zipper. And honestly, for all of the other bags, the next step is to attach the pieces to the zipper, because for all of these other bags, I'm not boxing or sewing up the box corners until later. So let's go ahead and attach some zippers, which means dropping zippers on the floor and then grabbing my zipper foot and I'm doing great today. Attaching the zipper foot to the machine. This zipper foot that I'm using is my Teflon zipper foot. It's just because it's the zipper foot that I keep with this machine now. I bought a bunch of extra feet, and so now each machine has its own set of feet, and I don't need to swap out between my machines. You definitely don't need a Teflon zipper foot for this project. It's just the zipper foot that I'm using. So let's just attach the zippers. I'm actually going to attach one of the other zippers first so you can see why I don't prefer to box my corners or sew the box corners first. So let's grab the Mingos. All right, this is my sewn. I'm going to set you aside for a second. I've got Mingos and I've got lining for Mingos. So I'm going to take a lining piece, put it right side up, take my zipper, put it right side up, take my flamingo fabric, put it right side down. So the flamingo fabric is right sides together with the zipper. And now I can stitch this. You can pin if you're a pinner. I tend not to pin, and I'm going to make 5 zippered pouches, and I don't love pins, so we're not pinning 5 zippered pouches. So both sides, right sides together. Now they are wrong sides together and right sides out. And I can top stitch right next to the zipper and then attach the other 2 fabrics, the other outer and the other lining, to the other side of the zipper. Okay, top stitch next to the zipper. Other side goes on the same way. Lining fabric, zipper right side up. Outer fabric right side down. And stitch. You can open this one up. You can absolutely press these with an iron if you are an iron presser. But these are just quick and easy little zippered pouches, and I'm not an ironer for this, so no big deal. I do like to bump up that stitch length on my machine when I top stitch though. I just think that gives a much prettier top stitch. Okay, so I have the outer fabrics and the linings attached. This would be the point where I would then box the corners, but we have the sample where we have already boxed the corners and haven't attached our zippers. So this was really civilized and easy to put together because everything is still flat. We're not dealing with any 3D objects. These ones, we've already made 3D. So we're gonna do the same thing, but with these 3D linings, or these 3D actually linings and outsides. And you're gonna see why I prefer to not have the box corners stitched yet. So same thing, I'm going to take a lining fabric. I'm going to put my zipper right side up. And now I have to take an outer fabric, but I want to flip these box corners this way so that all of my 3D is in the same direction, because if I were to try to do it this way, I would have like lots of nonsense. So this is less nonsense by flipping these, but it's just yet an extra step. Now I want to line up these edges, line up that zipper, and sew this Now, is this impossible and crazy? No, it's not. It's neither impossible nor crazy. It's just a little extra work when you don't need to have that extra work. So why do it? If you forget an order of steps and get excited and box your corners before putting in your zipper, is it a big deal? No, absolutely not. I've done plenty of bags this way, but because I've sewn so many bags, I've realized over time that boxing my corners in a later step is just easier for me. So that's what I choose. Okay, so I have these sewn together. I would then flip them right side out, but when I do that, see, I've got all this extra 3D, so I need to make sure that they're 3D's the same direction. And now as I flip it over and try to press from this side, I had to tuck these box corners the other direction just because they're in the way. Again, not the end of the world. And if you prefer doing it this way because of your reasons, that's totally valid. You can do it whatever way you want to do it. I'm showing all the ways and describing why I pick my way, but your bag, you make it your way. Because really, like, the point of this video at the very, very end, spoiler, is that basically all the bags will be pretty close to the same at the end. So the technique is your road of getting to your zipper bag. No one's going to look at it and say, oh, you clearly did it this way. The point is, you figure out a way that you enjoy making zipper bags, and then you can make a bajillion zipper bags yourself. All right, I'm going to top stitch this, and just like always, I'm going to bump up my stitch length before I top stitch, and top stitch from the correct side. There we go. And I'm top stitch. And then it's the same process of stitching the other side on again with our unnecessary 3D element at this point, but that's just my opinion, which really doesn't matter except that it's my video. So, okay, let's do the zipper on the other side just so you can see. Same thing, lining, take this piece, linings together, line them up. And the more boxed these corners are, so if I did this with like a big 3-inch box corner, this would be fairly impossible to get lined up because those 3D elements would really be in the way. All right, line those up as best we can. It's a zippered pouch. It's not rocket science. So if it's not perfect, it'll be fine. All right. So let me try to get these all lined up. There we go. And then this is the same process. I'm just going to stitch the zipper in, flip it, top stitch it with an extra bump up in my stitch length, so I have my pretty top stitch, and then I will have this bag sewn together. Okay, so sewn together. This one has the box corners already boxed, so we're already at this step on this one. Got a lot of threads. That has nothing to do with the way that I box the corners though. But my preferred version, still flat. This version has the box corners. The next step on this would be to sew the box corners. We'll do that in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and take my other 3 versions and get them to this point, although 2 of them won't have the corners boxed yet, but that's okay. We'll talk about that later. I'm just going to get all the zippers attached to all the different components so we can talk next steps. All right, so I have zippers sewn into all 5 of my soon-to-be bags. This one already has the box corners sewn, so I'm going to do that with this next one because the next step will be to sew the sides together. And I prefer sewing the box corners together before sewing the sides together. Then with this one, we're going to sew the sides together and then sew the box corners together. And then These ones we're going to sew the sides together and then make the box corners. So this one, box corners is the next, which is, it's really the same way that we just did these box corners. The difference is that it's all attached. And I mean, it's a little obnoxious that it's attached, but it's not as obnoxious as having that big 3D thing. And then if it helps, you can unzip this so that you have less bulk in the way as you're boxing these corners. So same thing, you're just folding the corner in half and then stitching, locking your stitches at each end. So I'll show you that here. So just fold it in half. Oh, how about we switch to a 1/4 inch foot, because we're done with our zipper foot. So we have our regular 1/4 inch foot back on here, and I've made sure to move my needle back to the middle. I have my box corner. I'm just going to fold this in half and then stitch this with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, making sure to, at the beginning and at the end, just go back and forth to lock those stitches. And with this zipper open, I can still chain piece these. There we go. And then cut one off the back. Bring it to the front. And then do another one. So you can still chain piece these, especially if you're doing a big bunch of bags. I mean, if you're not doing a video showing a bunch of different ways to do bags, you can do steps of your bag, of your multiple bags, and do all that step for all the bags at once. So let me trim this one off the back. I'm going to keep going, boxing all 8 corners on this bag. Okay. So I can zip this back together, maybe. There we go. It makes it pretty obvious where the zipper needs to go. There we go. And now this one with my little flamingos looks exactly the same as this one where I'd boxed it before adding the zipper. So these are now basically at the same point in bag making. The next step on all of these is to sew the sides together. So whether I do this one or this one, it's going to be exactly the same. You take the 2 outside pieces, put them right sides together, the 2 lining pieces, put them right sides together, and then you want to line up your corner seams, and we're going to sew all the way around, leaving a hole in the bottom of the lining. It's pretty simple. We'll just take this over to the sewing machine here, and you can pin these corners if you want. I'm again making just a bunch of bags, and so not worried about pinning or being super accurate, just making a bunch of zippered bags. So I start right before this seam. So I give myself a nice big hole for turning, but then I make sure that I'm sewing the seam. And then the zipper, I just pop the zipper, the top of the zipper towards the outside, which means the seam allowances go towards the lining. When you get to a zipper, you can sew over the nylon zippers. If you have a metal teeth zipper, you don't want to sew over it. This is a nylon tooth zipper, but oh, I realized that I forgot. I made the classic error. My zipper pull is on the outside. So before it's too late, I want to make sure this is at least halfway open. And that way I won't have my zipper pull on the outside, which is not good. Zippers don't open if the zipper pull is not in the body of the bag. So on the top of the zipper, I'm just going to add some extra stitching right there, which just gives it some extra support. Line up my next set of seams and sew all the way around. Same thing on this side. I'm popping the top of the zipper towards the outside of the bag and the seam allowances towards the lining. Gonna add a little extra stitching right here on the outside right before the zipper, and that just gives some extra strength right there. Line up the box corners on the lining. So pass those box corners, and that'll give me enough of a hole for turning. Needle up. Okay, so I've sewn the outsides together and the linings together. I can just trim off the zipper ends now that I make sure that the zipper pull is inside the bag. Turn it right side out, close the hole, my bag is done. But we're doing all these in stages. This one is going to be done the exact same way as that one because they were at the same stage. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this one real quick off camera so that I get that one to the same stage as that one. And then we're going to start talking about these where we're boxing the corners a little differently. Okay, so I've gotten this one to the same point as this one. They both just need clipped, turned, closed. But we're moving on to these, which are not as far. So this is the one where the corners are already boxed, but we're not going to sew these yet. We're waiting for another step to box these. So for this one, we're going to do right sides together on both the lining and the outside, and we're going to sew all the way around. So just like this, linings, right sides together, outsides, right sides together. So it's just like these ones that have the linings and outsides, rights together, and we're going to sew all the way around. The only thing here is that we're not going to sew in these box corners. We're not going to start here and then sew in these box corners. These are going to get sewn in another step. So we're going to sew this seam, this seam, this seam, and then this seam on two sides, leaving a hole. So we're sewing basically 5 different seams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is why this is not my favorite method because it's more tedious rather than sewing a big circle all the way around. So we'll go ahead and sew this, which is our just 5 little seams. I'll sew it basically in the same order that I sewed the other ones, which is little partial seam. I want to sew at least 1 inch here. And then open, cut, and now do the same on this side. And then the same as we did with the other ones, zipper top is going towards the outside and the seam allowance is going towards the lining. That's how we're going to squish that zipper flat. Same with the other ones, because it's the nylon zipper, I can stitch over the zipper. Same as the other ones, I give myself a little extra stitching right there to give it some strength. And then stitch to the end. So that's 2 of 5 seams. I'm going to stitch across the top. This other side. So as you can see, it's just more starting and stopping instead of just being able to sew all the way around. It doesn't mean that it's not a perfectly fine way to make a bag. All right, just like the other ones, I'm going to give myself some extra stitching right here before the zipper on the 2 outside pieces together. That just gives it some extra security. So that's 4 seams, and then this last little seam here. Which leaves our hole right here in the lining for turning. And y'all, I did it. I almost did it with the other 2. I actually did it with this one. My zipper pull is on the outside. Silly rabbit. So let me open up this seam real quick because the zipper will not work on the outside of the bag. It just won't. See if I can get the zipper full tucked in there. I'm gonna have to open up the seam some more. Okay, that's fixed. Now I have these last two that don't have the box corners yet. We're gonna do the same thing. This time we are gonna remember to open our zipper part way. We're going to do right sides together on both the outsides and the linings. And then this one we do get to sew all the way around. So we're gonna sew it starting here all the way around. So just like these ones that were easier to do, but this should actually be a little bit easier because it's all flat. There's no 3D parts to it. So we'll start over here. And we do have a 2-inch box corner that still needs to happen on here. So I want to start at least 3 inches in on my sewing. And we'll sew right up to the corner. And this is something that we haven't had to do with any of the other ones where we have to pivot. So we go up to a 1/4 inch away from that corner and then lift our presser foot up with the needle still down, put the presser foot back down, and then sew. Just like with all the others, I'm going to pop that zipper towards the outside with the seam allowances towards the linings. Just like with all the other ones, we can stitch over our zipper. I do it slowly. It's still a zipper, it's just a nylon zipper, so it won't break the needle. And then just like all the others, I do some extra stitching on that top layer. So I'm going to sew to the other end, stop a 1/4 inch away from the edge, needle down, presser foot up, pivot the whole thing, presser foot back down, and then you can sew. So this one and the other one are both going to be sewn this way, where we're just going to sew all the way around and then making sure to sew 3 inches in on each side on this lining. So I started 3 inches in, and when I go around, I want to end 3 inches, going 3 inches in. And then yes, I did remember to open my zipper this time, so I will not have to fix that. Okay, so this is what this one looks like. Just looks like a flat zippered pouch. I'm going to do the same with this one, sew it just like this one, and then we're going to take these last 3 pouches that don't have the corners boxed and box the corners on those. Okay, I hope you're still able to follow along where we are with our number 1, 2. So this is number 3, where the box corners are already cut. We just haven't sewn them yet. And then our 4 and 5, which is where we haven't even cut our box corners yet. Okay, so for this one, now we can go ahead and sew the box corners. And the way we do that is we go ahead and we take this box corner and you bring it flat. And then you take your 2 seam allowances, put them in opposite directions, and then you sew this. Now you can add pins if you're a pinner. We all know that I'm not a pinner, so I'm just gonna bring this to my sewing machine, and you can see why this is not my favorite method. While it is nice to sew a flat thing, I don't love the 5 seams that I had to do on this one, and I don't love this big chunky bulky thing trying to get it under the sewing machine. It just feels really inaccurate to me, and you'll see yeah, the seam allowance is super imperfect there, but it's still a box bag, and this is totally a way that you can do it. Some people might have better luck with it. It could also be that this is just not the way that I normally do a box bag, so I'm not as skilled at this method, which is totally valid. Maybe you do this all the time and you're super skilled at doing it this way, so this works really well for you. You do want to go back and forth to lock your stitches at the beginning and end, and then sew all the way across. And because the box corners are sewn together, There's only 4, 2 on the outside and 2 on the lining. So that is less, that is a perk. So I've done the 2 outer box corners, and now I can sew the 2 lining box corners. The lining should be easier, there's not as much bulk. I'm just gonna grab the 2 sides, open that up, nest those seams, put it under the machine, try to get it mostly flat. Again, lock your stitches at your ends so that you don't have box corners that pop open. So that's 3 of 4. And then I have 1 more to sew here. Now, the next way that we're going to do is actually really similar to this. Super similar. Sorry, I'm getting this little pleat in here that I don't want to tuck. There we go. So that's why I'm showing these in the order that I'm showing them in, not necessarily because a certain order is my preference of doing things, but because these techniques, when you see them like this, they kind of build on one another in terms of how they work. So you've seen how the other way of doing box corners goes, and so this now makes sense. And now because you've seen this method, the next method will make even more sense, and then so will the final technique. Okay, so I've now sewn all those box corners, and if I take these 2, flip them inside here, take these 2, flip them inside here to make it flat, now it looks exactly like all the other ones, and it's no different than the ones that I've already done in terms of how far it is in construction. Okay, last 2. So for this method, it's basically like the method we just did, but we aren't going to cut anything yet. So we take our piece, and it's going to be easier to do with the lining pieces, so I'll do that first. And you want to separate the 2 layers of the lining. I'm going to see if I can open this zipper up all the way, which I think will give me a little more mobility with my bag here. There we go. So I've got my 2 separate lining pieces, and I'm going to line up the seams. So this is the seam along the bottom and the seam along the side, and then I've got my point. So I want to line up these seams so that one is going one way, the other is going the other way, and those seams are lined up, and it makes this like triangle, right? This is getting in my way. I might actually pin this, see if that'll help get that out of my way. There we go. Okay. So I have my triangle, seam going one way, seam going the other way, and I can lay this flat. Now with everything else, I did a 2-inch box corner, but that was a 2-inch on each side. So for this one, I want a 4-inch box corner. I'm getting this pleat over here that I'm trying to pull out. There we go. I want a 4-inch box corner. So I can feel these seam allowances, trying to get them lined up as best I can. There we go. Make everything as smooth as possible. Again, I might be better at this if this was the technique that I used all the time. And honestly, this technique is the first technique I ever learned for boxing corners. So this was the first method I used. Okay, so we have our corner flat, and I'm going to take my ruler, and I'm going to draw a line, and I want the 2-inch line here. This corner should be, it's tucking in again, just because of the size of the bag. There we go. All right, so 2-inch here. I've got the from 2 inches, it's right here on that point on that seam allowance. And you might use like a reusable or a removable marking pen. I'm going to use a dark marking pen so you can see it here. So I'm drawing a line. Let's see if you can see that better there. I've drawn this line. That's going to be the line that I sew on. So I'm going to pin this to try to keep this flat. Bring this to the sewing machine. Okay. And now I'm going to stitch this. And just like with all the others, I'm going to lock my stitches back and forth at the beginning and end here so I don't get holes in my bag. And then here is a choice that you don't have with the other options, which is if you, well, definitely take this pin out. But if you want, you could leave this flap in here. Generally speaking, it's extra bulk, so I would cut it off. But depending on the kind of bag you're doing, this might provide extra stability in the corners for certain types of bags. I don't know, but that would be an option, and it might be a reason that you would want to do this method so that you keep that extra fabric. For me, it has no value. I will get my scissors. All right, these are the closest, closest scissors that I have, and I'm just going to cut this carefully. So I'm only cutting this fabric. And I'm just cutting this point off that I've stitched, and I'm cutting this down to a 1/4 inch seam allowance, give or take. And you can cut this with a rotary cutter if you prefer. That's also fine. So this is, ta-da, that boxed corner on both sides, and it looks just like the squares that we cut off with all the other methods. And I'm going to repeat this process on 3 more corners to complete the box corners, which will then get it to the same point that all of these are at. Okay, this fusible fleece was a little bit harder to mark, but it's holding itself, its shape together better. So these are actually easier corners for me to do, which is surprising. But also, I've also done the lining, and so those aren't floppy and in my way, so that's also nice. But the thing that I'm noticing as I'm cutting off these boxed corners is that and again, this is not a method that I do all the time, so this could definitely be a function of me not being as good at this, but you can see that this is pretty inaccurate. One side is definitely cut different than another, and that is consistent on every single one of these. So to me, it feels just like not as accurate. But again, this is also not my preferred method, so obviously, I have bias here, not bias in the fabric, just bias of the technique. Okay, so now I'm just gonna cut off this last box corner, and I have this bag at the same spot that I have the other 3 bags. So if I just pop this in, you can see this looks just like all the other bags that we've already made. So it's just like, you know, different ways to skin a cat, different roads to the same destination, depending on the kind of journey you want. We have one last way that I'm going to show you how to box corners, and I'm excited about this because it meant that I got to buy a new Notion, and we know that I love a Notion. So this is Carol's Box Corners marking template. Never heard of this before, never seen it before. I was at Sewing Machines Plus a couple weeks ago, and I found this and I said, aha, because I'd already been thinking about making this video, and this tool cinched it because I got to, you know, play with a new tool. So let's play with a new tool. This tool is basically replaces this ruler in the technique that I just showed you. So we're going to read this real quick. And it says, easily mark and sew box corners for purses, tote bags, wine bottle bags, pillows, cushions, outdoor furniture, and much more. sew the 2 pieces of fabric to form square corners. Align the fabric so the 2 seams of the corner lay against each other. Place the vertical line of the template along the stitched seam. Place the diagonal guidelines along the outer edge of the fabric. Slide the template to the desired length by using the ruler at the bottom. Mark the stitching line. Sew, cut off the excess, and turn inside out for a perfect box corner. And this is from almosthavenwoodcraft.com. Or sorry, Almost Heaven. Haha, I could read. Almostheavenwoodcraft.com. So we'll go ahead and do that. It was easier on the corners with the fusible fleece, the last one I did, so I'm going to give myself as much of a leg up as possible and do the fusible fleece corners, which have a little more body to them. And so I'm going to get these, same as before. Come here. Line up that center seam. Try to get that, squish it flattish. And then I want a 4-inch, so this is it says that is going to be a 4-inch right there on those lines. I've lined up that center seam, I've lined up the 4-inch, and now I can use my ruler, I can use my marking pen to mark this. So rather than using a traditional ruler, you can get this cute little template from almostheavenwoodcraft.com. I bought this from from Sewing Machines Plus, and Sewing Machines Plus, it was an $8 template. It was $7.99, so not bad at all. And now I'm going to stitch this corner and cut it off, and then I'll do the same with the other 3 corners, because again, these are double corners, so there's only they're already sets of 2 were sewn together, so instead of sewing 8, I only sew 4. Now there is another question that I got, or a comment that I got, and I feel like this was more accurate, maybe because I just did 4 of these corners already, but this looks like it's more accurate in terms of the box corner. I don't know if it's the tool or just me getting more practice. But anyway, another comment that I got regarding box corners is that with the box bag template, or using the ruler to cut the square corners off at the very beginning, that is not the same measurement, because if you're cutting a 2-inch box corner, you're getting a 4-inch depth, so it's not the same thing. I mean, it is. You just need to make sure that if you want a 4-inch finished box on your corner, that you're only cutting 2 inches off each side. The whole point of the math is so that you get the result that you want. It's not about cutting 4 inches. It's about cutting the amount that you need to cut to get the result that you want. And for most of these things, you'll often follow a pattern, and the pattern will tell you how much to cut, and they'll know how much to tell you to cut based on the result that the pattern is supposed to give you. So don't worry about, oh, it's 2 inches or 4 inches. The pattern will tell you what you need to do. Okay, so I'm gonna sew this one, cut it off, sew the 2 linings, cut it off, and then we can finish all our bags, because they're basically there. They just need to be flipped, and that's the best part. All 4 or 8, depending on how you count it, corners are boxed, and this one is also ready to have the zippers clipped and be turned right side out. So I'm going to start clipping the zippers and turning these all right side out, and then assuming that the point of this video is what I think it is, which is basically there's more than one way to do a lot of sewing techniques. Most sewing techniques have more than one way. There's more than one way to bind a quilt. There's more than one way to cut your fabric. There's more than one way to starch your fabric, if you even starch your fabric at all. There's more than one way to do so many different things in sewing and quilting, and you don't know what you like until you see the different techniques Maybe one is faster, maybe one is easier, maybe based on some kind of, accessibility or the size of your machine. There might be a bajillion reasons why you prefer one technique over another. But I want to encourage you, if you're ever taking a class from a teacher, and the teacher says, okay, in this class, we're going to do this technique, that you try the teacher's way of doing the technique, because that's what they're an expert in. And there's a reason that they picked doing the technique that way. And if you do the technique their way, and you say, thanks, I hate it, then you never have to do it that way again. But you've had that experience and oh, there is this technique in the world, and there might be times when I might want to use it for reasons. Or there is this technique in the world, I don't like it, I'm never going to do it again. That's also okay. But just because I do my bags a certain way does not mean that you have to. Just because you do your bags a certain way does not mean that I or anyone else has to. There's different ways for all of us. And different excuses to buy acrylic templates for different purposes. I honestly, I've never used, this is the Carol's Box Corner marking template. Never heard of it, never used it before. That sucker was handy. I liked it better than the big Creative Grids ruler to try to get over that corner. So if you prefer that method to box your corners, you might like that template. I'll see if I can find a link to where you can buy it and link it down below if that is your jam. But you can see I'm stacking up all these little zipper pouches, and they're basically the same. There's not a whole lot of difference between these pouches once they're all constructed. If I gift these to a friend, unless they watch this video, they won't say, oh, that's the one that you did using this method. They won't know. They'll have no idea which way it was constructed. They'll just know it was a cute zippered pouch. So honestly, I think that the kind of fabric that you use for your zippered pouch is going to matter more than the technique that you use, because your friend's going to notice the fabric you used. They're going to have no clue on the technique. And if you're curious, by the way, about these fabrics, these are all Art Gallery fabrics. These are, I think they're all actually from the same line. This was the Valentine's collection. And I had every intention to make a Valentine's quilt with it and then didn't. So I thought, well, what's cuter than a bunch of Valentine-y zippered pouches? Maybe a Valentine's quilt. I don't know. But this is fun. Okay. Getting in and trying to finish unzipping the zippers is sometimes a little tricky. That one actually went pretty easy. All right, this is the last one that I'm turning right side out. I have not closed the hole in the bottom of any of these. I'll get to that later, maybe. We know this about me, that if I don't close the hole now, there's a likelihood that I never will. So, but I think this video was long enough. I think y'all have gotten the point, and you don't need to see me close lining holes. But there you go. 5 zipper pouches, basically all the same, made with 5 completely different methods. You pick the way that works for you, and you go make yourself some zipper pouches, my friends. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to this channel, I don't know what's stopping you. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. Friends, subscribe, and I will see you right here real soon. Bye for now.